I've had enough of this fucking thing in my life. You know, I've really, really got to the point where I've got a righteous anger in me, which I think is born from new levels of self-love and self-care that absolutely refuses to the core of me to have this fucking influence affect me anymore.
Okay, so much there. Let's try and go really deeply into it and capture this moment, because there's so many people who must be identifying with what you're saying, including myself. We have all been here and never like now in this historical moment when we're seeing all the stuff going on in the world and we're experiencing these personal struggles that you're describing. So, first of all, remembering it's all stepping stones. We must not fall into the trap of rejecting therapy or religion or any of these things which do have a positive side as well, even though they've been hijacked. It takes great insight, compassion, and maturity to have that rightful anger, but not turn it again on what can also help us if we see it and understand it the most deeply. Therapy and anything that attempts to deconstruct a past moment will always be based and hooked up somewhere with stepping out of the current of your direct lived existence in purity. But having said that, sometimes it can be extremely useful, and it can give you a perspective that also unhooks you in a certain moment. It doesn't happen much in those modalities, but when it does, it's seismic. And especially when we take them on at the beginning, it can be life-changing. However, as we go deeper, we quickly realize there's no substitute for living life direct on, and we can't use these narratives which effectively reinforce the identity and the negative happenings which are already part of a program that is attempting to gain our attention. So then we stride right past both the positive and the negative of things like spirituality, religion, therapy. They have their place, and we can support others who are still taking part in them as something that's very necessary for them. But been there, done that. We want to do it our own way now, and we want to face down whatever this thing is straight on. And the way that we go about that is not by facing it down anymore, but fiercely and intensely living ourselves even more. Because what happens when that moment comes along is that suddenly we are given a much bigger space to be seen. And that's why the self-love and the self-care comes in so strongly. But also in the outside world, people start to see us and care for us more. And it's very important that in that moment, we don't lose our balance and reproject the story and the fight and the anger from the negative side. And if we show the positive anger and the fierceness, we do so in a very aware and responsible way, so that we start to really model this whole nature that we have, which is about materializing more and more good stuff straight out of who we actually are, rather than what we're not. And the rest will fall away because we take that trajectory, and that we refuse to indulge for even a second longer any of that other stuff. And this is where everything starts to change in the opposite direction. We go through a long process of getting into what shouldn't be to try and get it out. And then we reverse, having gone through that successfully. We're reborn, and then we focus instead on what should be, because there's nothing to get out, and there's nothing even to focus on anymore that isn't us, because there's only us.